Welcome to the Wanderers History Podcast and to a new episode that will continue to look at some of the most important doges in 16th century Venetian history, part of the broader Rulers and Monarchs of the 16th century Mediterranean and Europe series. We've talked about Doges Loredan and Andrea Gritti. Today we will look at some other doges who presided before, during, and after the Fourth Ottoman-Venetian War. So as a result, I'll want to talk about and summarize today just the Dogeship of Girolamo Priuli, and then in the next episodes I'll want to talk about Pietro Loredan, Alvise Mocenigo, Sebastiano Veniero, and Niccolò da Ponte, with more detail on Pietro Loredan and Alvise Mocenigo. Before we continue, I'd like to remind you to please hit that subscribe button to never miss any new material from the podcast. It really does help the channel a lot, and let us resume. Girolamo Priuli started his dogeship in 1559 after the death of his younger brother Lorenzo Priuli, who ruled between 1556 and 1559. Girolamo Priuli ruled between 1559 and 1567. Almost a decade of peace for the Venetians, but not for the Mediterranean as a whole. And also it was a very critical period for Venetian Cyprus. In the book, a lovely source called The Doges of Venice, primary source edition, first published in 1914 by Aubrey Richardson, the author makes a statement mentioning that in the 20 years following Doge Francesco Donato's death in 1553, quote, 8 aged worthies succeeded each other as doges. The only memorable characters among them were the three last, Alvise Mocenigo, Sebastiano Veniero, and Niccolò da Ponte. The names of brothers Priuli, Lorenzo, who was elected in 1556, and Girolamo, who succeeded him in 1559, should however be remembered as those of wise and honest old men of irreproachable conduct. Lorenzo was a particular favorite of the people. End quote. Doge Girolamo Priuli had to navigate very difficult situations, especially given the escalation in conflict between Spain and the Ottoman Empire. A crucial episode being Gerba in 1560, when Philip II, Doria, and Spain suffered a calamitous defeat which emboldened the Ottomans and set them on the offensive in the Western Mediterranean for pretty much the rest of the decade. The Siege of Malta was another critical moment. On March 3, 1565, a Venetian bailo, Vittore Bragadin, informed Doge Priuli and the Senate that the Ottomans had prepared a force of 10,000 troops. The exact purpose of this expedition was unknown at the time. Therefore, a motion was made by the Senate, the Venetian Senate, to debate on whether the information should be revealed to the other Italian republics and states. Eventually, it was decided to withhold this information from Milan and Naples, yet it was decided to inform Maximilian II, as the Holy Roman Emperor had very recently secured an 8-year truce with the Ottomans in February 1565. Venice, as well as the Emperor, wanted to avoid conflict with the Ottomans at all costs, both on land in Central Eastern Europe, but also at sea for the Venetians. If one looks in the 16th century and how the Venetians reacted to Spain's failure and defeat at Gerba, the near collapse of Malta, and the reluctance to declare war against the constantly taunting Ottoman force, one sees little or no strength in confronting the perils which threatened the Venetian Stato da Mar, or the Commonwealth. It was only a constant avoidance of military conflict until military action would be the last resort. Now, Suleiman the Magnificent benefited from this Venetian neutrality, at least until 1565, 1566. The Venetian neutral stance prior and during the siege of Malta, we see Doge Girolamo Priuli and the Senate ensuring that the Venetian fleet avoided the Ottomans and ordered the retreat of the Venetian fleet in Dalmatian water, far from the Turkish Armada's routes towards Malta. Now, although Pope Pius IV did not put any substantial pressure on the Venetians to join a coalition for the defense of Malta, the papal nuncio in Venice, Cardinal Guido Luca Ferreri, constantly pressured Doge Priuli and the Senate to provide more information regarding Ottoman military activity in the region. Venice played no role in the relief of Malta. However, in the long term, the failure of the Ottomans at Malta would have some repercussions on the Venetian Republic's Commonwealth. It created the urge for the Turks, the Ottomans, to find an alternative to Malta, which ultimately led them to target Cyprus in 1570. Now, there are different circumstances. You have the transition from Suleiman the Magnificent to Selim II. But many connections can be drawn between the Ottoman campaigns in 1565 against Malta and in 1570 in Cyprus. Girolamo Priuli's reign ended with his death on the 4th of November 1567. Priuli ruled over most of the decade which preceded the Ottoman conquest of Cyprus and the Ottoman-Venetian War between 1570 and 1573. He had to navigate the effects and repercussions of the Treaty of Cato Cambresis in 1559, which made Spain and Philip II de facto kind of a dominant power in the Italian peninsula. So therefore, the Venetians wanted to avoid conflict against Philip II of Spain. At the same time, the Venetians, during the reign of Girolamo Priuli and not only, prioritized at all costs peace with the Ottomans. The Battle of Gerba marked the beginning of a long and incoherent struggle for more than 2 decades, in which Venice wanted to play no part, even in Malta, which constituted a key moment which might have had disastrous ramifications for Spain and most of the Italian peninsula had the Ottomans been successful in 1565. Even then, the Venetians decided to not actively participate. In the short term, this helped the Venetians avoid, or better said, postpone another costly war against the Ottomans. However, this neutrality against the Ottomans came at a cost of a very reluctant Spanish effort to aid the Venetians when the time came to try and recapture Cyprus, apart maybe from just Don John of Austria's determination on the Spanish side. There's also the matter of the internal problems caused by Venice's exploitation of Cyprus and the poor administration of the kingdom, which was officially under Venetian rule since 1489. Kenneth Seton, in the 4th volume of the Papacy and the Levant, described the Venetian administration of Cyprus as, quote, inefficient and wasteful, end of quote, while it was suffocated by incompetency and neglect. There are differing views on Venice's rule over Cyprus. I've talked extensively about this in the first 4 episodes of the podcast, so please make sure to check those out. Benjamin Arbel describes Venetian rule of Cyprus as a golden age, but in 1562, for example, we see reports of discontent among the peasantry in Cyprus, exhaustion of Cypriot resources, which inevitably resulted in the 1565 grain revolt, when the local peasantry opposed the massive exports towards Venice, despite the severe depletion of local resources required for the local population. In what is a very good primary source compilation of documents called Excerpta Cypria, we see one report from German traveler Führer, who observed the severe discontent of the peasants of Nicosia related to the massive corn exports to Venice. Now, obviously, there was delegation of power from the Venetian Republic when it came to the administration of several important parts of the Venetian Commonwealth, whether we're talking about Crete, Candia at the time, or Cyprus. But the Doge still could have some power and say along with the Senate when it came to matters as social issues, but also fortifying the defenses at Nicosia, which proved to be such an important part of the Ottoman conquest of Cyprus. So while the Ottoman-Venetian peace was reconfirmed in 1567, this did not prevent war from breaking in 1570. The Venetian Senate, as well as Girolamo Priuli, ignored and did not do much about the deteriorating situation of Venetian Cyprus. As I've said before, Nicosia was not adequately refortified. Priuli and Venice's neutrality when it came to the Ottomans, in a way, just postponed the inevitable. Whilst it is possible that Suleiman did not have any specific ambitions of Cyprus, unlike his successor and son Selim II, who saw it as an easy inaugural conquest, one has to observe the complacency of the Venetian Republic when it came to Cyprus, taking for granted what was an immensely important economic cog for the trade with the Levant, an important location of numerous natural resources, and the bastion of Catholicism, which was of relevance also for the papacy. Girolamo Priuli's reign was a peaceful one. However, Pietro Loredan's reign would see a steady increase in tensions, culminating with another war with the Ottomans during the very beginning of Alvise Mocenigo's rule. I'll talk more about that in the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wanderer's History podcast about Venetian Doge Girolamo Priuli, his rule, and the history of Venice between 1559 and 1567. Of course, more oriented towards Mediterranean affairs and Venetian Cyprus. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already to never miss any new material from the podcast. Happy New Year to everyone, and until the next time, all the best.